about all the cool stuff you've done. So
That
That's
fucking
well,
train
this is
is
very
still
short list.
laying on the horn. Still.
Where are you guys at?
Oh, I'm in Ocean Springs, Mississippi, and I'm about not even a half mile from the train tracks. This
Yeah.
frickin' train has been blowing his horn for like 5 straight minutes now.
Nice. That's helpful.
Oh, it's so aggravating.
they have to do that because they hit a hobo there a couple of weeks ago.
Hit a hobo.
You didn't hear about that?
No.
So I work at the city, so this was a big thing. Like, yeah, they hit a homeless person with the train.
Oh my God. That's
So of
awful.
course now they're gonna just blow the horn. They're like, "Hey, get out of the way!"
Jeez, man.
Yeah, it was horrible.
Look, can you hear that? It's still going.
I can't hear it
God,
actually.
I can hear it. Like it's going right into my headphones. Like all I hear. All right, let me pull up here.
We're just over a mile from the train, and at night, in the dead of night, when the air condition is off, you can hear a faint whisper of a horn.
Must be nice.
Yeah.
Not
Yes.
here. They hit the edge of the city and they just lay on the horn.
Well, it's like, I need to turn that off. But I live in the woods, so it's like I don't hear any trains, but I do hear gunshots all times of the night.
I'll take trains.
Yeah, gunshots are kind of ominous.
Hey,
I shit you not. Someone last night at 1 a.m, I heard a lawnmower cut on. Someone's just mowing their lawn at 1 a.m.
We have a neighbor, our next door neighbor. I think he hates his family, so he just goes outside and uses the leaf blower like for hours. And I know his back of his yard is dirt. It's just dirt. And he's out there with the leaf blower. And I'm like, all right, dude, you might want to get a therapist because your family can't be this bad.
Good Lord.
That's
All
gonna
right.
be
Well,
me
I guess we're good to get started if you guys are.
Mhm.
All right, Jacob, you ready?
And
Yes,
log
sir.
Damn it!
Yeah, I got all the ad reads and everything pulled up.
All right, here we go in 3, 2, 1.
Oh, thank you for joining another episode of the Open Micros podcast, which is brought to you by that dirty, filthy motherfucker, BJ DeBlow. He knows exactly what he did, and he would have started his own podcast, but he was too chicken shit. Oh, and if you like Jay but think he's too good looking, try the Justice Court, hosted by Jay's fat twin, Mike Evelyn, found wherever podcasts can be downloaded. And this podcast is also brought to you by J.N. Reynolds, who, when I asked him what his ad read should be, he said, "Roast me raw." His words, not mine. So I will say, J.N. looks like E.T. if instead of phoning home, he did hard time for heroin possession.
J.N. looks like he pays people to pee on him.
Let's go ahead and start this.
That music can only mean one thing. It is time for the Open Micros podcast. My name is Jason Robbins.
I am the younger and much more good-looking Jacob Craig, and I can't speak. I'm
can't
from
speak
Vancouver. Please
English.
forgive me.
Those good
I'm
looks,
Jacob Craig.
Those good looks kept you from learning good speaking English.
Yeah, me no good speak. Guys, I'm very excited because we haven't had a guest on this podcast in way too long. It's been almost like 4 weeks since we've had a guest.
And what
I'm
a guest
excited.
to come back with. Holy cow.
You are right, dude, because this guest will be at Pensacon February 18th through the 20th, and he is none other than the fabulous artist, Mr. Christopher Burdett. Thank you for coming on our show. How are you doing, Mr. Burdett?
I'm doing amazing. And when this famous artist shows up, I'll be even more happy.
You know, I was really nervous about this because I'm such a fan of pretty much everything you've ever done, and I'm looking at your resume and I'm like, where should I even start? I mean, you've done stuff for, you're an artist you've done Dungeons and Dragons, you've done stuff for Star Wars, you of course made monsters for Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Where do we start, Jacob? Do you even know where we should start with our guest tonight?
Dude, I honestly, I don't know.
let's
really don't
take
know.
it back to the beginning.
Yeah, we start at the beginning, and when we get to the end, we'll stop.
Sounds good.
You know what? That's a good game plan.
So tell us where you got your start, because you're an author, illustrator, painter, monster maker. I mean, you pretty much do it all. Like, how do you get started doing that?
Well, it goes back many, many decades. I was a 3-year-old kid, and I went to see a movie. My parents took me to this movie. You guys may have heard of it. It's kind of a cult classic. It's called Star Wars. And I saw Star Wars. Yeah, there's this Star Wars thing. This George Lucas guy made it. And I was 3, and I saw Star Wars opening night back in 1977. And yeah, all I knew was I just kind of thought to myself, I want to make that. Whatever that is, I want to do it. And a good dose of Godzilla and Ultraman and other monster movies and stuff along the way. And ta-da, here I am. All right, and thanks for having me.
Oh, that was a great episode, everybody.
No, join us next week.
Yeah, no, I mean, I got hit pretty hard with monsters, especially the cantina in the original Star Wars movie. And I didn't know what it was, and I didn't understand. And all I knew was like, this is like the most amazing thing ever. And then I got my hands on a Dungeons and Dragons monster manual in the early 80s. And I read it like a book. To me, it was a book. And I was like, I didn't understand the game. I didn't play the game. I didn't play the game for years, but I like collected the monster books just to read.
The same thing. Like I used to get borrow Dungeons and Dragons books from a friend of mine, like the Dungeon Master manuals, and I would just read them. Like I didn't know it was an actual game when I was a kid, but I just like the art and like just everything about it.
Yeah, for me, they felt like books from another time that I like had access to, and I was like learning about this other place in a way that a traditional novel didn't, because I was like learning the math behind this world. It's like there was dice and math and like all these crazy numbers, and everything meant something. But I was a kid, so I was just kind of like, I was making it up as I went along because I didn't understand, and it just kind of went from there. I remember I went to a neighbor's friend's house as a kid, and his brother was older, and he had some of the little pewter miniatures from Dungeons and Dragons, and I saw those, and I was like, oh, this is a game changer. And I went home and I started drawing my own monsters and sculpting them out of clay and telling stories, and I just didn't stop. And it just kind of went from there.
That's amazing, though, that you managed to sculpture, well, I use the word sculpt, but sculpt your entire life around what you loved as a kid. I mean, not too many people get to claim that.
Yeah, and the thing is too is like it's taken a lot of hard work and being an adult to do it. So it's trying to hold on to that joy and that excitement and awe of the child experience with these things, and then kind of like make sure that's in your pocket at all times as you're being an adult and dealing with contracts and deadlines and the stress of the world.
Yeah, to take fun and try to make a living off of it is never easy.
Yeah, that's a whole nother conversation.
So something that I'm curious about, throughout your whole career, like is there a specific character that you enjoyed either drawing if they already exist or designing if you were making up a new character?
Well, it depends on the property. With like the Star Wars projects, my favorite character is the reptilian bounty hunter Bosk, the Trandoshan. Nice. And my second favorite character is Admiral Akbar. And so it was always kind of like the goal was to do as many Mon Calamari and as many Trandoshans as I could. And it's just, as long as I'm working on the project, I need to keep making these things. And like right now, if you follow me on social media, I'm doing 50 days of Star Wars, where I'm posting work that I did on the Star Wars properties, one or two pieces a day for 50 days. And today's day 7. So there's 43 more days to follow me on social media and see all of my Star Wars work. I did 100 days of Dungeons and Dragons at the end of last year.
Wow.
The last 100 days, because I'm just kind of like, I've been doing this stuff for a while. Let me just kind of flood the social media with my work again, and kind of just re-experience and relove it. For D&D, I have had the opportunity and the pleasure of designing and redesigning monsters for 2 separate editions. I worked on leading up to 4th edition and then on leading up to 5th edition, and I was on the design teams of both, and just kind of giving things a new take, completely restarting some monsters, updating them, and doing that kind of stuff. And that's generally what I've done with D&D a lot. Is I'll be assigned something new or something that needs to get redone, updated, and I deal with it. And that's just in general just a fun experience to be kind of like, all right, this is a monster that I've been familiar with since I was a very little kid with my first monster manual, and now I get to breathe life into it and how I imagine it. And for one of those pieces that's carried with me is the Ankeg. It's kind of a subterranean big insect monster, and I illustrated it just straight up for 4th edition as it had been, and then in 5th edition I got to redesign it and illustrate it.
So how does that work when you do something like monster designs for Dungeons and Dragons? Do they just sort of give you a character and say, hey, go make this, and then you come back with the finished product? Or is it one of those things where you got to do like, a bunch of different mock-ups, and they sort of pick and choose?
Oh yeah, I mean, this is where my time in working in the film industry in LA really kind of helped, because it's kind of like when I was in LA, I had about an hour, literally sometimes an hour, to design something brand new that no one's ever seen that needs to be on screen next week. So like for D&D, when I was working on 5th edition, my art director, he'd be like, all right, how many pieces do you want? And I'm like, let this round we'll do 7, and so I'll be focusing on 7 pieces, and he'll give me like, all right, it's the Beholder Death Tyrant. It's an undead beholder, but we need a completely new look for it. Give us something. And then they're like, okay, here's another beholder kin. It's a Gauth. It needs to be something new, and it has to look different than other beholders. You need to be able to recognize it instantly. I'm like, okay. And like the other thing is like, okay, we need a were-shark. And it's like, okay. And then, in the Erkakoda, we need an update on this bird creature. He was kind of like a vulture weird thing in the past. Now he needs to be like a hawk or an eagle. And they'll give me descriptions, because sometimes they're like, all right, this is explicitly what we want, and it's like, oh, that's not fun. Or it's like, here's an idea. It's like, this thing is a shadow. What does this look like? And I'm like, those are the extremes, and both are fun and have their problems, but it's like mostly in the middle. It's kind of like, here's an idea. What is your take on it? Is kind of like what I like, and kind of be able to bring some of myself.
So is that kind of what you prefer, is when they really don't have an idea for what something looks like, and just kind of like, come up with something?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes that's the best. Sometimes, well, actually, I kind of like having a little bit of a confined box to work in. I think for me, especially on a deadline, that helps the most, where it's like, okay, this thing's humanoid and it needs to feel reminiscent of this, say, this like Japanese demon from 1200 years ago. Here's a picture of a silk painting, something like this, but not this.
Yeah,
go for it. And I'm like, oh, let's make some demons. It's kind of one of those things. And I mean, like, so, and and I always say that there's an arc with work for me, where it'd be like, it's kind of rough at the beginning, and then I'll hit my stride and we'll be like going crazy, and then at some point I'm like, I've taken on too much work, I need to stop. So it's like,
do you have stuff maybe like on the back burner, like just stuff you do on your own, and then they're like, want something, you're like, ooh, this kind of fits, and then present that?
The very first work I ever did for Wizards of the Coast, who do Magic and Dungeons and Dragons and other stuff. The first project I worked with them in 2005 was a new miniatures game called Dreamblade that lasted a few years, and it was a tournament-based competitive miniature game. And if you haven't played it, it's like super cool. It is a really good game. And it doesn't take much, though. There's a cajillion miniatures and there's tons of sets, but they're kind of all real cheap now because they haven't been in production in over a decade. But when that first started, they had ideas, but then the art director came to me and said, "What's in your sketchbook?" And I'm like, "What?" It's like, "What are you working on right now?" And I was like, "Oh, I have these drawings." So like, "Oh, well, we're going to buy this. You need to do a turnaround of that. We're going to make that into a miniature." And it's like, "Oh, that's going into Dungeons and Dragons." And like, there was all this stuff where I'm like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, whoa. Is this what it's really like?" And that was the first and the last time that ever happened.
Wow.
So it was kind of one of those things where I've always wanted to get back to that, which is kind of why I've, one of the many reasons why I wrote and illustrated my own book, and which is becoming books, plural.
So do you prefer to be do you like writing your own stuff, or is it just something that you kind of had on the back burner, or?
Well, I've always been a writer, and I remember I had instructors, teachers in high school and stuff, and in college are like, "Wow, you can really write really well, but your spelling is atrocious." And I'm like, because I grew up with dyslexia, and I'm a horrible speller, and it's just one of these things. But I've waited long enough, and we have spell check on everything. There's the Grammarly app, and there's technology that has my back and keeps me going. And when I started my first book, I mean, technically, I started the first book in 1998. I published it in 2020 because if you're going to see the conclusion of 22 years of work, you do it during a pandemic. And because it was the Kickstarter launched the Saturday of Pensacon in 2020.
Oh wow!
And yeah, so it was a big deal, and it funded in less than an hour, and it was great. So I had the mock-ups the mock-ups of the books at the convention. They were overnighted to me by my publisher, so I had them at the convention, and I had a big setup, and I had some of the art from the book, and it was this big thing. And so it's nice, jump ahead 2 years, I can come back to Pensacon and have the book with me.
Awesome. And the name of the book that you're going to have is The Grand Bazaar.
The Grand Bazaar of Ithra Von Dahlia, and it's the first book, Monsters and Merchants.
Fantastic. And how much are people looking to flop down for the book?
Well, this book that it's over 250 pages with over 100 pieces of art is $40.
That's not bad at all.
Oh,
and if you're a Dungeons and Dragons player, I also have a pocket guide that has D&D stats for all of the monsters in the book. And if you want to have some more fun, I actually have a coloring book of all of the art as well. So yeah. Because if you're going to make a book, the best thing is make is 3 books.
Yeah,
yeah. I'm gonna have to pick up that coloring book because I'm 5. But
no, yeah, it's super cool, and yeah, so it's kind of one of those things where it's my at some point early on in the production, when my wife realized it's like, oh, you actually are like working towards something. She's like, scan the line art of everything, and I'm like, what? Just scan it, scan the line art. It'll be useful for something. So I had to retrofit some of the line art, some from the early pieces after the fact, but the rest are all scans of just the line work from all of the illustrations. So, and that's what you get to color.
Nice. That's awesome. Now I know we've touched a little bit on both Magic and Dungeons. I'm curious, between Magic the Gathering and Dungeons and Dragons, is there one of those games that you particularly enjoy playing yourself?
Well, a million years ago, back in the early 90s, I played a lot of Magic, and I had a lot of Magic cards, and I played up until the release of Ice Age, which was 96, I think. And that's when I stopped. I left for college, and I just stopped buying cards and stuff. And sadly, against my will, all of my cards left my possession in the late 90s when they were, yeah. And I don't look at prices because I'm like, oh, I had 5 of those dual lands, and I had 10 of those dual lands, and I'm like, oh, those are only going for $1,000 each now. Oh, that's I'm glad I sold my cards for $40.
Yeah.
But I played some second edition of D&D back with a group of folks that I knew when I worked at a comic book store back in the mid 90s, because that's what you do, you work at a comic book store. So I played some D&D then. I played some D&D in 3.5 when I was out of college, and then when I started working on 4th edition, I DM'd a lot of 4th edition D&D, but our group kind of finally fizzled out, and I haven't really played since. I don't have the time. That's the trouble. Spend so much time working on this stuff, you never have time to play it.
It's funny you say that, you know, like Magic the Gathering and stuff, like you got out of it when you went to college, but when I went to college, that's when it seemed like Magic the Gathering was like everybody was playing it. Like my first year of college was 96, and like in the commons area, you know, with all the tables and like the cafeteria and everything, like people would just sit there and play Magic the Gathering all day long, and it always seemed like so I never got into it because it just seemed so daunting. Like, you know, you had like the super nerds that are like into it with like books of cards, and like you ask them about it, and they try to explain it, and I'm just like, I can't do it. It's too much for me.
Oh yeah. I mean, and I look at it now and I'm like, in theory, I understand what's happening, but I'm like, it is so, I mean, it's 20 plus years beyond when I played. So there's, I mean, 20 years, I mean, 2 decades of cards that I've never even really seen, you know, and it's like, I mean, it's like I have to have people tell me if the card I worked on is good or not, because it's like, and most of the time they're not. I have filler cards, but you know, I have a rare coming out at some point this year. That's going to be an extended border. It was my first one, so that's going to be fun. Hopefully that'll be a good card.
That's got to be hard to take. Like you get in a conversation with somebody, and you're like, "Oh, you make Magic cards?" Like, "Yeah, I did this one and this one." I'm like, "Oh man, those cards suck." Like, how do you take that? You're just like, oh.
For years, I'm talking years, after my first card came out, I had people, especially at conventions, coming up to me and gleefully telling me that my card was the worst card in the entire history of the game. And I'm like, it's like, do you feel better now for telling me that? I mean, it's like, did someone dare you to? I was like, I mean, it's like, you all know, it's not like I made the card, right? I just painted the image that's on it that I was told. I don't know the card stats until you know the card stats. It's like, I don't like, most of the time the names change. We don't know what set they are. It's, you know, there's a lot of layers to keep us from purposefully and accidentally leaking too much information if we happen to open our mouths in public. Because in like I think it was right before I started working on Magic, there was a lot of lawsuits. Basically, there was some artists and some gaming folks, and I don't know, I think there were some of them were in Europe, I don't know if any in America, but there was a massive breach of intellectual property, and that there were lawyers were involved, and there was a lot of bad things. And after that, as far as I know, sets got code names, you know, everything is like, when you get the style guide, it is your style guide that you have to unlock with a password. Wow. And so it's like they know if it gets out, they know who did it. And that's totally cool. I get that, but yeah, I mean, at this point, it's like I work on a card, and like a year and a half later or a year later, it comes out or it doesn't. And it's, you know, it's kind of one of those things. I had a piece that went missing for like 5 years. I did it for one set, and it was going to be new art for an existing card and it was going to be in a commander set, and it never came out. The set came out, and they either used the original art that was already there, or they used someone else's art. And I'm like, because it wasn't the first time that happened. Because the first time when your art doesn't get used, you have a panic attack, and you doubt your very existence as an artist. And by the time the magic work didn't get used, it had happened so often. And like stuff, projects getting shuttered. It's like I'll work 6 months on something and they're like, oh, it's not going to get made now. Oh well, and you can never show the art ever. And I'm like,
yeah,
I'm gonna talk to my lawyer about that one. But yeah, I mean, eventually, I've shown everything I've ever worked on that went missing. But sometimes I can't tell you what it was from. I can be like, here's some work that I don't own the copyright to, that you can't touch, that I can't tell you about, but I made it. Isn't it cool out of context? But yeah, where was I going? So many thoughts.
Well, is that kind of like sadly the world that artists have to work around? Because like I've had a private conversation with another fairly well-known artist who's described the same kind of things to me. Like we had a whole conversation about all the people that shafted this guy.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've had publishers basically their payment bounced, and then they're like, oh, put it through again, it'll go now. And I'm like, okay, what about the fee that my bank charged me? Hello, what about the fee the bank charged me? And they're like, meh. And I'm like, wow, I did this work for even less money. Wow. So I remember where I was going. So yeah, I had a piece that went missing for 5 years, and then it like randomly popped up 5 years later in some other complete set as new artwork for a card that hadn't been reprinted since Ice Age. So I was like, the fates have shined on me. A card that was in the last set I ever played has been reprinted, and it has my art on it. And I'm like, okay, everything, the circle is complete.
So like, do you make royalties when that happens, or?
oh, you kidders!
Yeah.
If I had royalties, I would have retired with all my Star Wars work, because they have reprinted and reprinted and reprinted my stuff on the Star Wars games so many times. I think I had a piece that's been reused like 7 or 8 times now. And it's like, the first time they paid me, it was only like $100, and they've reused it like 7 times.
Wow. Damn you, George Lucas, and your billions.
It's not George Lucas. It's not Disney. It was the gaming company.
Okay. Well, damn them.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's one of the reasons I don't work with them anymore. And I'd rather make my own games.
Right.
So, as far as you've done makeup effects work too, special makeup effects, and some of the stuff you worked on has been, of course, we mentioned before, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Angel, Firefly. What did you do on Talk Soup?
That was one of the first things I ever worked on.
I saw that. I was like, what?
So there was a couple. It was the filming schedule of Talk Soup back in the day, because the show's long gone. They basically had blocks of time that they filmed, and though they were addressing like active shows, and the whole. If those who are not familiar with Talk Soup, it was a talking head variety show that made fun of daytime talk television. Mm-hmm. So like all of, and they would, do funny edits, and it was kind of ahead of their time, because there's a lot of people that do that kind of thing now. It was just, recapping and talking about.
Yeah, it's basically, it was YouTube in the late 90s, early 2000s. Before YouTube.
So they would film a bunch of episodes or parts of episodes all at once. So, and they would film in like this weird, like 2-hour, 3-hour block every day, but they would cram as much into it as they could. And they were doing a James Lipton spoof with Hal Sparks, who at the time was the current host. And so we did this bald head and kind of this age makeup, excuse me, and I think it was James Lipton thing, but it was just one of these things where it's like I just had to show up and be an extra pair of hands to the boss, it's like, and so we did the makeup, and I think it was James Lipton, and So Hal did like a bunch of different segments that I think got dispersed over multiple shows. And then randomly that same day, they were filming uh, Mongol warriors, Genghis Khan's warriors attacking someone and dragging them out of the building. And they needed people, and I just happened to be there, and I was free, so they put me in armor, and I'm literally like have the leg of somebody, and there's some random episode where me and some like super nerdy dude with like glasses, he's wearing his glasses, and I think there's four of us, and like three of us were like totally like, oh, look at those Caucasian dudes, and like one guy at least was like, I think he was Hispanic, so at least he had, maybe could have can be considered a warrior. It was just like it was all totally silly. And so we're like carrying some dude out of the building, and we're in like Burbank or wherever. I forget where they filmed. It was the things too. It was weird in like LA. It's just like you go to the 50th floor of this of this skyscraper, and it's the whole floor is a filming studio. It's like, this is a weird world. It's a weird city. So yeah, we're out front on the street carrying this guy up and down the street. He's screaming and rioting, and we're just carrying him down. Yeah, that was the beginning and the end of my work on Talk Soup. It was one day, and it was like a bunch of episodes all crammed into one day.
That's so cool.
And you got to be a Mongol warrior for the duration of your period on Talk Soup.
Yeah, there's like, it's the thing is we didn't have our phones at the time, so I have like some weird random digital photo that I don't even think I have. I sent a photo to my mom in an email, and she printed it out, and it's this bad printout, and that's the only record I have of it. It's just like in this weird printout in a scrapbook. So
we should do some homework and see if we can find that episode of Talk Soup somewhere.
It would have been late 99, early 2000.
Okay, we'll get our intern on that.
Yeah.
I'm thinking more late 99 than anything.
Okay, late 99. Okay, so BJ, when you listen to this, if you can send me the link to that episode by the end of the day, or you're fired.
Good luck finding the archive of Talk Soup.
I'm sure they might have all the Talk Soup episodes somewhere.
Yeah,
if anyone can do it, it's our intern. Believe me.
It would be funny, like if on Amazon Prime or HBO Max or something, like they've been lumped into the it was what was the channel? Was it Entertainment Television?
I think it was.
I think it was. Yeah.
Like someone had to own them. They were. Were they owned by the same folks that owned Nickelodeon? It would have been HBO. So maybe somewhere in the HBO archives there are all of the Talk Soup episodes. I'm sure someone would watch them.
Yeah, I mean, Talk Soup was a really funny show. Like, I don't know why that wouldn't be streaming somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, they had a ton of great hosts, and some of them went on to like do huge things.
Yeah, that's where Joel McHale got his start, and he's a huge A-list name right now. I want to talk about your work on specifically Buffy, Angel, and Firefly, the Joss Whedon projects. Like, I want to know everything you did for those. Please tell me all the stories you have.
Okay. Well, first and foremost, we didn't know he was a garbage human at the time. I wish I had known.
Oh, wow.
That's one thing we didn't know, is that he was a garbage human. So he seemed really cool at the time, though he was kind of aloof and kind of stuck to his own. But I did catch him one day on set singing the Trogdor song from Homestar Runner. And I was like, oh, that's kind of really super cool and nerdy for him to do that. And then he saw me seeing him do that, and he stopped and like ran away. So I don't, anyway. So let's see. I worked on season 7 of Buffy and seasons 4 and 5 of Angel, and then the only season of Firefly. The shop that I worked for had already acquired the shows from the effects company called Optic Nerve. They had done the Joss Whedon stuff for a while, and there was just kind of some friction between companies, and the shop that I worked for was brought in for Buffy season 6 for What's More with No, the Demon Suite episode, the musical. I guess that is the Once More with Feeling. The shop was brought in to do the makeup for the main demon that was causing all of the singing and dancing stuff, and it was kind of like a switch was turned when my boss and the team showed up with what we could create, and it was kind of like, oh, you're the guys now. And it was kind of right after that, it was like Optic Nerve was out, and the shop I worked for, Almost Human, was in. And after finishing up the 6th season of Buffy and season 3 of Angel, they needed more people. And I had previously worked with the owner of the company back in 99. Summer of 99, they were filming a low budget vampire movie here in Tallahassee, where I went to school. I went to FSU. And I was in the art department, and they put up signs in the art department saying they needed people to work on this movie. And I'm like, I'm a person who can work on a movie. And I took the sign and I made a call, and like literally the next day I was talking to a guy in LA who was going to come out and worked on the movie. And I was like, you're my ticket. Yeah, I know I see a path forward in making art and doing cool stuff. And I spent the summer basically interning with a Los Angeles trained makeup effects artist. And when I graduated at the end of 99, I went out to LA and worked with him on a number of things. That's when I worked on Talk Soup and did a ton of commercials and monster movies and all kinds of weird stuff. And I did that for about a year or so until the internet bubble burst for the first time in 2000. If you're old enough to remember, when like, all the venture capital money like vanished and the internet collapsed on itself, and we no longer have the internet. But yeah, so like work dried up for a chunk of like the last half of 2000, and there was writer strikes and there was all kinds of stuff. So I left LA, and then jump forward, they have all their shows, and come to 2002, I get a call. Thankfully, the call came 5 days after I proposed to my wife, or to propose to my fiance at the time, my wife. I proposed to her. 5 days later, I get a call like, hey, we need you. We got tons of shows. We're overwhelmed. I got an opportunity for you. Come back out to LA. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to do this. It's like, I told her, I'm like, hey, so you want to move to LA and for me to work on movies? And she's like, yes, let's do this. And, you know, it's much better than like, I'm moving away. You want to get married? So I hit the ground running. And like the first week I was back out there, I was working on an episode of Buffy. I was working on a show called Miracles that lasted 13 episodes or something. Was it Skeet Ulrich? Is that an actual actor's name? Yes, I don't know. He was
Skeet Ulrich.
Ulrich. Yeah, he was in Scream, wasn't he?
Yeah.
But he was the star of the show called Miracles, and it was all
that show.
Yeah. Oh, it was there and gone, and it was one of those like 2002, 2000. No, it was a 2002 show. He played a very young priest, and like crazy stuff would happen. So like there was a woman in a plane who died, and they did an autopsy on her. So we had the scars on the actress, and I made organs. And then it turned out like whatever happened in the plane reverted itself 36 hours after you got to the ground. But they had then done the autopsy, and they cut her up and she died anyway. If they had left her alone, she would have been okay or something. But we made burned up bodies, we made mummified bodies, we did a lot of cool stuff, but that's not Buffy or Angel. So
that sounds fun though.
Yeah, I mean, it was cool. That's the thing. It was just, I was still a kid at the time I was working on those things, so I wasn't the artist I am now. I didn't have the experience, I didn't have the skill set, and I was driving a train, and I was laying the track right in front of the train the entire time. And I was just trying to keep my head above water because, you know, I was a dumb kid, kind of just out of college, and I got thrown into a group of folks that some of those guys, they they'd been in the industry for a couple decades already, and they had tons of experience, and they could do all this stuff blindfolded, and here I am, I'm like, I got enthusiasm. And so it was a huge learning curve, but it's kind of one of those things where I wouldn't be where I am today if I hadn't gone through the shitstorm of Los Angeles, because I got to meet a lot of amazing artists that I did not work with. There were just other artists in the area, and they were the ones who kind of encouraged me and showed me ways to get better and how to improve and new ways to think about drawing and using reference and all these things. And then with being in LA, I did a lot. We did a lot with Trauma. So I'm in, and I worked on the Toxic Avenger 4. There's a ton of other Trauma movies that we've worked on, and I'm in, and that's still some happy memories of working with Trauma and Lloyd Kaufman, and just and I superformed the Toxic Avenger at events. So if there's a period of time, if you saw the Toxic Avenger anywhere in the country, it was me.
That's awesome.
I did Toxie in Florida, I did Toxie in LA. I mean, a lot of places in California, and there's a ton of DVDs that if you look at the extras, and there's going to be Toxie. That's me. That's me in the suit.
So
but,
I would guess that here there's a movie you did in 2004 called Tales from the Crapper. That's got to be Trauma. It's got to be
Trauma. And the thing is, it was like 2 or 3 movies that there were supposed to be 2 or 3 standalone movies. And they turned out so badly that they turned them into one movie and made an anthology. And the thing is, I honestly have to say, the extras on that DVD of Tales from the Crapper are some of the best extras that I've ever watched. I mean, granted, it is talking about experiences that I was part of, but it's basically Lloyd Kaufman talks about the implosion of Trauma LA, because Trauma used to be based originally in New York, and it still is. But for a while there, they had a Los Angeles office. The office was literally across the street, across the alley. There was like, it was 10 feet from the studio that when I worked originally in LA. So I mean, we in Trauma were like that. I mean, they're right there. So I would walk across the alley and walk in and go like, "What are you guys working on?" It's like, "Oh, can I borrow this DVD to watch?" It's kind of what it is. And so we were doing a lot with them, and the movies, because it was Soul Stripper and Ticket to Ride, I think, were the 2 original names of some of the movies that they made, and they bad. I mean, bad. They're it's like everyone was that, and that's the thing I was like, I try to say, because a lot of people talk about quality is based on their opinion. It's like, oh, I didn't like it, so it's bad, or I like it, so it's good. I'm like, no, that's, you like it or you don't like it. The quality of the object stays unchanged by your opinion. So in this case, they were bad.
See, that says something too, because the reason that Trauma has the reputation they had is because they're bad movies, but they got a lot of heart behind them.
Right,
so and when something's so bad that even Trauma's like, I don't think we should put this out.
Yeah, well, because what it came down to is they didn't have enough usable material to edit together to make something good. And I mean, that's the thing. That's one of the things about Trauma that I loved, is that you have these impossible ideas that have been made into an 1.5 hour movie. And it's like, how did this even get made? How did and they acquire a lot of stuff, though, they make their own stuff. And the Trauma brand movies are wonderful. But like, they acquire a lot of crazy stuff, and it's the fact that like a group of people got together and were able to accomplish this and make it. I mean, that's the South Park guys, Matt Stone and Trey Parker. They are who they are because Trauma bought and finished Cannibal the Musical, which was their first feature. And that, I mean, it's amazing. It's an amazing movie, and it's one of these things where a lot of these things are time capsules. It's like, only at a particular time, at a particular place, could this be made, and it will never be made again. You'll never see anything like it.
If people out there have never seen that movie, It's amazing. Cannibal the Musical is something that, especially if you're a South Park fan or even
And
a passing South Park fan,
but
that
if you
movie's
like
so out
if
there.
if you like musicals, I mean, there's like,
Yeah.
even if you like the idea of musicals, because they take the idea of a musical and turn it on its ear, and there's a lot of like, I mean, and if you know that if you know their live action movies, if you know or Orgasmo and Basketball and
Mm-hmm.
some of these other things, you'll see some of their repeat buddies and like the actors that they like. You'll see them in all of these movies, and it's just kind of fun to see them kind of be doing their shtick and being part of this like weird little shared universe of Trey Parker and Matt Stone's
I mean,
movie worlds.
they made a musical about the Donner Party. I mean, you can't
Mm-hmm.
get any better than that.
Wonderful. Yeah, but I mean that, and I felt like I was really kind of like in a sweet spot of trauma at the turn of the century, 2000. It was, yeah, there was a lot of stuff was happening, and then the extras in Tales from the Crapper showed the demise of Trauma LA, and basically Lloyd Kaufman is talking shit for the entire time he's doing the extras, and like has video of being on set and people talking shit about him until he shows up. It's like you're talking shit about Lloyd Kaufman, the guy who's paying you to be there to make a movie, and you're like talking crap about him behind his back on camera.
I just don't see Lloyd Kaufman like he has such an East Coast vibe about him. I just don't see him ever really. I don't know. It just seems like LA is the complete wrong place to have something like Trauma. Like that just seems like such a East Coast DIY thing to do.
It's why it's not there anymore. It's just because it was out of arm's reach, and I think at one point, like a dude had co-opted The Office, and Lloyd called the office, and the dude picked up and said his production company's name over the phone, and that, I think that was the kiss of death. I think Lloyd was on a plane then, like within an hour, and but anyway, I got tons of crazy stories like that, because being like, that's the thing. It's like you don't get those stories unless you're in the middle of it. If you're like in the meat of these things happening, but yeah. So Buffy, Angel, and Firefly.
Well, hey, I need to find a DVD copy of Tales from the Crapper, because I got to see that extra.
I think I have two. I keep buying copies because I'm like, oh, I need to watch that. Oh, I don't have it. And I'm like, yeah, there's that stack of them over there that I keep forgetting about. So I think I bought another one last year because I'm like, oh, I don't have that, because there's so much that I worked on that I've never seen, that I've never watched, that I don't own. I mean, there's a show called The Inside that it was one of the last things I worked on, and it was a TV series, and it was supposed to be the next big thing, and it wasn't. And it never got put out on disc. And I think some bootleg copies are on YouTube. And I'm like, oh God, I found it. I can now go see. And I never watched. I still didn't go back and watch it. The very first movie I worked on, which was the movie that I shot here in Tallahassee in 1999, it was never released. It was I think they finished it, but it was never released. It was a Roger Corman movie that Roger Corman didn't want to put out. So that should tell you everything you need to know. But and
it was the Tales from the Crapper of the Corman universe.
Yeah, and I mean, it was pretty much all crewed by college students in the film school at FSU. So I mean, capable people. And they tried to get actors, and I mean, I have friendships that still are to this day from the cast and crew of that movie. But I like waited and waited for that thing to come out. I wanted to see it, and I found the director on YouTube a couple of years ago, and I'm like, oh God, here he is. I found his channel on YouTube. So I reached out to him, started talking, and I was just like, hey, so whatever happened to this movie? And he's like, oh, I can't believe you know about it. And I'm like, well, I'm like, no, dude, this is me. I worked on it with you, remember? And he's like, oh my God. And he's like, all right, so it's up on this Dropbox, and I'm going to give you a link to it and you can get it, but you can't give it to anyone else. You can't share it. And I'm like, oh no, cool. And I got it and I promptly forgotten about it. And then like a year or two later, I found out that literally 10 days after that, he died of a stroke.
Oh my God.
So, yeah. So I was like, yeah. So I was like, I would like, and I still haven't watched the movie because that's, and I still, because it's weird now. I feel like it's cursed. It's a cursed movie. But it was just one of these things where it's like, I was 10 days away from never getting a copy of this. So yeah, I mean, I've scrubbed through the file. I'm like, oh, there's the movie. Like, there it is. And because I mean, it, power to him, bless everyone who worked on it. We all were working really hard, but it looks like it was shot with a camcorder in the mid 80s. And it just it's you know, there was a period where, you know, where digital wasn't film, and it was very clear that digital is not film. We have now long since gone past that. And you know, you can still tell when it's digital sometimes, but you know, our cameras and everything's gotten better, and stuff's shot all digitally now. But yeah, there's a rocky period that I was involved with the industry, and it was that transition from film to video, and so yeah, a lot of stuff didn't hold up.
Yeah, you can definitely, if you go back and look at some of those early movies that were, you know, like this was shot on video and it's supposed to look like film, like, hey, it kind of looks like video.
It's like, if I can see the compression and the 100% output, it's like
you go back and it has that look about it, like you go back and watch those old like Doctor Who episodes from like the 80s, and it's got that look to it. It's like, ooh.
Sometimes it looks worse than that. Because I mean, yeah, some of that old BBC stuff has like J.J. Abrams lens blooms for days before lens flares, you know, before he's like, I'm like, yeah, that looks kind of cool back then.
Like, I got a copy of, I don't know if you guys know who Neil Gaiman is. I mean, I'm sure you know who Neil Gaiman is, but I have a copy of the BBC presentation of Neverwhere from like 1997 or 98, and they're talking about redoing it. I think it's got like James McAvoy is going to be in it, and I'm like, man, I need to pull out that VHS and watch it. But I remember at the time I got it as a bootleg at one of the local conventions, and I was watching it. It has that very, like, it was shot on like a 1980s handheld video camera. It's like, this is so hard. Like, it's a good story, but man, this is so hard to watch.
Yeah, it's abrasive to the eyes.
Yeah. It's like you expect to. It's like you expect to see, like, you know, like just like the caterer, like the they like you see like the boom, the boom mic coming into the shot and stuff like that.
It's one of these where it's like, oh, sorry.
Like, great story, but gee, hard to watch.
I feel like we keep getting close to Buffy, Angel, and Firefly, and we're like, nope.
Oh, well. Since you brought it back up again, though, I know you worked on season 7 of Buffy. Did you happen to do any of the design for Clem the Demon?
Clem predates us, so we inherited, and it was weird. Like, some of the stuff that we inherited, we either got to redo, like Anya's makeup, her demon makeup, we redid. But stuff like Clem, I don't know what the arrangements was, but like Optic Nerve kept their molds, which they shouldn't have. They should have given us their molds because they no longer had the show, but they were like, no, we have them. So like Optic Nerve was still being hired to cast up new Clem pieces. And at Pensacon, because COVID time is like throwing out my
oh yeah,
I would say, like, it was 3 years ago.
Time,
like, no, 3 years.
Time has no meaning anymore.
Yeah. One of the Pensacons 2 or 3 before, I don't know, it's sometime in this world. Where are we? What time is it? What's going on? The actor that played Clem was at Pensacon, and I got to I'm like, hey dude, you don't know me, but we work together.
Yeah, we talked to him right here on the show a couple of years ago.
That's why I brought it up. He was on episode like 7 of our podcast. Yeah. We talked to him.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, he's a cool guy, and he was like really, really like patient with me because he was on a panel and they were doing they were doing the match game, the
Oh yeah,
the
yeah,
old,
yeah.
yeah. And at Pensacon they do a match game thing, and someone canceled, and then my wife ended up as one of the celebrity guests, and I ended up being one of the contestants. And the person playing with me or against me, she had no clue what was going on. She was deer in the headlights the entire time, and I knew what you had to do. And so I was like desperately trying to help her, and I would tell her answer like, it's like, say this, and she's like, why? And then say something stupid, and she wasn't getting that you have to be funny and dirty. Like the whole point is innuendo of this game, because it was like, well, one of the things was um Cindy the cave woman was so dirty, she got what on her wedding night? And I was like, she got boned. And it was just like, and it's like everyone was like, oh my god, that's fucking. And I was like, I was trying to like, and like the person I was with like didn't get it. It was just like, I'm like, oh, so yeah, he was up on the panel of celebrities with my wife and a bunch. I think some of the guys from Comic Book Men were up there and stuff too. So he was cool afterwards. I'm like, hey dude, I worked on Buffy at the same time you were there, and we had our little moment. I got some photos, but
Well, Christopher, I hate to do this, but we're coming up on the end.
No, we gotta keep this going. We're just gonna keep this
Here's
going.
the
We haven't
thing.
talked about anything.
I love talking to you so much. Please tell me you're gonna come back on the show, and like, let's do it again in what let's say April. Have you back on the show?
Yeah, I mean, I got a million stories, and I'll keep talking. I literally can do this all day.
We can do this like let's do this. Let's do a special episode where we're gonna have you come back. We'll do it in April. We'll start earlier in the afternoon, because the only reason I have to go is because I have another podcast coming up in 30 minutes. We're gonna start earlier. That way we can have at least 2 solid hours to talk to you. Does that sound good?
Yeah, I'll do that in a second.
Because we haven't even. I mean, we haven't talked about anything.
Yeah,
we haven't
even scratched the surface.
If out there, if you listen to this and you like this interview, go check out ChristopherBurdett.com. I'll put the link in the show notes, and just look at this resume. Just look at this freaking resume. Like, I have to scroll and scroll and scroll, and we haven't even scratched the surface of everything I wanted to talk about tonight.
I feel like we were talking about like everything around my career.
Yeah, this episode was just foreplay. We're gonna get to the good
This
stuff.
is just This is part 1. We'll do part 2. We'll schedule.
Anyway, about Buffy, Angel, and Firefly. So
we'll come back to that on the next one. And yeah, if you're gonna be in Pensacon, which is not, see, this show is on Friday. It'll be next Saturday. If you're listening to this on Friday, what's the date? The 11th. Okay, Pensacon is next weekend, the weekend of the 17th, 18th, and 19th, I believe.
Yeah, 18th through the 20th.
Yeah, 18th through 20th in Pensacola, Florida. Me and Jacob are both going to be there. I'm going to be doing a Nerd Cave Retro panel on Saturday afternoon. Go visit
I'm gonna crash it.
Yes. Go check out Mr. Christopher Burdett at his table. He's got
look for the red walls. Look for the I'll have tons of these books, and I have 3 panels at the Pensacon too. I'm going to be doing an artist showdown where there's going to be a bunch of us drawing live. I'm going to be talking about my time in the career. I'm going to be talking with I forget his name because I'm bad with names, but he was Darth Vader and worked on a ton of video games and did post-production on Star Wars movies, and it's going to be me and him, and I don't know why I'm there. I just want to listen to him talk. And then I'm doing another panel about doing cover work and fantasy illustration. So
you don't want to miss it. Just go check out Pensacon.com. You can get the Pensacon app, and that'll tell you where everything's going on. Just download that app. It's going to be a fantasy, awesome.
It's too bright. You can't see it. Oh, well.
It's going to be an awesome weekend. I'm definitely going to come see you at your table and shake your hand and tell you that, hey, remember me? We talked last Wednesday.
It'll be like, remember me? And I'm like, no, I don't remember.
Right.
Just remember this. Remember this and the bald head, and that'll be me.
The head's
Yeah.
a dead giveaway.
Well, yeah, you and like 100 other dudes.
Well,
That's
yeah.
true. That's true.
But thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been one of my favorite episodes we have ever done. I don't know about you, Jacob,
Thank you
but this
for
was
having me.
fantastic.
Yeah, no, I had a lot of fun. This was a great change of pace after the last few weeks.
So where can everybody find you on the interwebs, Mr. Burdett?
Well, you can go to ChristopherBurdett.com, and that has pointers in all the different directions, but you can also find me on ChristopherBurdett.blogspot.com. I've been doing a 3 times a week, give or take, blog since 2009 that chronicles my entire career. So all of the ups, all of the downs. I have tutorials on how I make work. I talk about what I'm doing. It's all there. That's where my stream of conscious is. The professional stuff's on my website by my name. Yeah, I got a store. If you want to buy art or books, you can get that stuff. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Twitter. All the links are on my website or everywhere else. Just look for Christopher Burdett. I'm here. You can find me.
I just followed you on Twitter too. It's at Chris Burdett on Twitter.
Yeah, because they had a limitation when I couldn't do my full name when I joined Twitter, but now you can have the whole name.
Oh, I feel your pain. I got a long name too. But Jacob, what you got coming up before we get out of here?
Man, I just want to say thank you so much, Mr. Burdett, for coming on. I will for sure check out all of your panels. I'm going to be trying to hit as many panels as I can while I'm there, and I'll check you out at your table too. And you will also not recognize me, but
just remind me who you are, and I'll remember.
Just look for the guy with diabetes. That'll be Jacob.
Oh.
Thanks, man. But I will actually, if you're watching live, and I hope you are, I will be opening for Mick Foley tomorrow night in Mobile, Alabama, at the Alabama Music Box. Tickets are still available. Surprisingly, they're gonna sell out, but they're still available right now. www.alabamamusicbox.com to get those, and come see Mick Foley and me opening for him. And come to the Juke Joint every Tuesday night if you're local to Ocean Springs, Mississippi, to see me hosting that. And that'll just about do it.
And I'm going to go and play our music here. If you want to email us, we're at openmikerspodcast@gmail.com, at openmikers on Twitter and Instagram. And if you'd like to help us keep the lights on and you would like to get roasted at the beginning of our episode, head over to patreon.com/ompodcast. Also, B-Res Coffee Company, and go get a bag of our very own coffee and use the code OMPodcast for 10% off your order. And we'll see you guys next week. And that was an episode. Awesome.
Oh, that was a good one too, man.
Thank you everybody for watching on Twitch, and we'll be watching on YouTube later. We'll see you guys next week.